So hello everyone. So I'm Saptarshi, in case anyone doesn't know me yet. So the topic today is social network analysis. So I start with a few customary things. First, thanks to Microsoft Research for bringing me here and giving me the opportunity to present this. Also, like most of the talks have started with questions like how many are linguists, how many are this and that, how many are computer science people out here? Okay. So that's I mean a bit consoling because my talk would be a bit biased towards them. However, I have tried not to go into any like technical details as much. So they should be accessible to others. And as always, please feel free to ask any questions at any point of time. So I'll talk about social networks. So let me start with a bit of history. So social networks in the offline world have been studied for last several decades. I mean, it dates much back to study on online social networks, which were not even there, say, before, say, 2000 or something. So the social networks in the offline world which were studied are mainly, you can see some examples. For example, friendship networks among students of a school, then or members of a club. Then collaboration networks among scientists or movie actors. So if, say, several scientists have collaborated with each other to write a paper, then say they are connected to each other in the social network. Or if multiple actors have acted in the same movie, then they are connected to each other. So these kind of networks used to be studied in the offline world for a long period of time. And the social network theory is quite well developed. So there are several sociological theories, some examples of which you are seeing here. And these sociological theories have often resulted in these quotations or sayings, as we know. For example, birds of a feather flock together. This is typically the result of different sociological theories, that people who have similar tastes or who are similar in some way tend to form groups or tend to be connected to each other over a social network. Right. And so I mean, technically this characteristic is called homophily, but in common terms it's like the birds of a feather phenomenon. And in fact, as you can see, for these two theories I have put a date because I know of a paper which first proposed that, but for homophily I don't even know like which study was the first which kind of officially proposed that theory. So it dates quite back to even maybe early in the 20th century or something. So in 1961, possibly one of the most famous experiments on sociology was done by a person called Milgram. So what he did is, I mean, it's difficult to imagine that he did this experiment. He actually handed out letters, letters to different people in the US. And so the letters were addressed to people in other cities. So maybe he was doing this experiment in, say, Chicago, and the letters were addressed to someone, say, in New York. And these persons to whom the letters were given did not know the person to whom the letter was addressed. So what he said was, hand over this letter to someone whom you know by first name basis, or whom you address on first name basis, such that this letter has a higher probability of going to that person to whom it is addressed, and ask that person to do the same. So I give you a letter and tell you to give it to someone of your close friends, such that maybe someone in, say, Delhi gets the letter. So this experiment continued, and many of the letters did not reach. So most of the letters, I would say, did not reach the destination, because it's a very difficult thing to do. Like, you are being given a letter addressed to someone whom you don't know, who lives in another city, and you can only hand it over to one of your close friends, someone whom you know on a personal basis. So usually you will think of, okay, maybe this person has a higher probability of knowing someone in Delhi than I, so you will give the letter to him or her. So anyway, this was a difficult experiment, and most of the letters did not reach. However, about 25 to 30% of the letters did reach. And for the letters which reached, it was seen that the number of persons through which this letter had to go was close to 5 or 6, not more. So that led to this theory called 6 degrees of separation, which said that anyone in the US is connected by a hop of at least at most distance 6. Right. So that was one theory of 6 degrees of separation. Usually social, so that I mean, in more technical terms, it means that a social network can be quite large. However, if you take two people in the social network, usually there is a short path in it. And by the way, most of these theories have been validated on the online social networks, which I will come to later, and these hold. So, for example, just to put this in context, this theory has been tried up on Facebook. The study was done by Facebook itself. Therefore, they had the access to the whole data. So, Facebook network is a network consisting of maybe 1 billion users, and at that point of time also there were 800 million users. Even then, they found that the degree of separation, that means you take two nodes or two actors in a network and measure the shortest distance among them on average, it comes out to less than 6. It was between 4 and 5. Right. So, even for a network of that size, 1 billion nodes, this holds. Another famous theory is called the strength of weak ties. So, usually our ties, the social ties we have, the social links, they are not all equal. Some are strong, some are weak. How do you define strong and weak? There is no fixed consensus about it, but an intuitive idea is people with whom we interact more, we have strong ties with them. Maybe we meet them every day and so on. Whereas there are some people whom we say maybe write an email once a week or even less, those are our weak ties. So, everyone has some strong ties and possibly many weak ties. However, the weak ties are very strong in one another aspect. That is, let me ask you, so it's a weak tie, you do not interact with this person often, but what do you think can be the strength of such a weak tie?
It connects to disjoint communities.
Yes, it connects to very disjoint maybe communities. So,
it improves the distance between them is thus therefore lessened because of this particular person.
yes, but maybe a practical utility of a weak tie. So, the idea is this, that people with whom you have strong ties, maybe they are in your family or in your job or in your workplace, they won't be able to tell you something very new. Possibly they know almost what you know. Whereas, if you have weak ties, maybe someone in another city and all, he or she might actually give you some very new information which you do not know. So, it has actually been seen that weak ties are quite useful during job search. So, maybe people in your company won't be telling you of a new job, but others whom you maybe your school friend with whom you have just a weak tie now, he would tell you of a new job maybe. So, those are some cases where weak ties, the name is still weak ties, but they are strong. And apart from that, there have been a lot of other slightly more complex theories, like how epidemics spread in a social network. So, any disease or any convention which maybe spreads through contact, which might be physical contact as well as maybe just seeing someone do something, you also repeat it. So, how they spread in a social network, so these theories are there. Yeah. So, now, as I said, these studies were all going on in an offline world, in social networks in the offline world. So, how were these studies done? Actually, people went to so for this study, it's a very famous study. Actually, the researchers went to a US school and asked the students, who are your friends, how close are they, who are your strongest friends, and questions like this. And they did this study, which was very famous at that point of time. But then what you can imagine, how many people can you do a survey with in an offline world? Maybe 200, maybe 500, 1,000, and that was the scale of the studies. So, as you see, these kind of studies, they were done with maybe 400 students in the school, right. So, I will come back to this picture later to explain what this is, but the scale was this much, like for a few hundreds, at most a few thousand and so on. Okay. Then came online social networks, right. This is a standard picture, I don't even know some of the networks out there, but there are too many nowadays. So, then came online social networks and they had a huge change. So, they quickly became very popular on the web, they have billions of users and there is a huge diversity among the users. There are celebrities, media houses, politicians, common people. Also, there are bad users or evil users, I might say, like spammers, cyber bullies, hate mongers, and so on. they are good for us, like Ritesh won't be able to do the project if hackmongers were not there, but yeah, they are usually a bit evil people. So there are both very good, I mean very popular well-meaning users who give lot of valuable information. Also there are these like evil users. And also that these social networks have started having a huge impact on business. Like lot of advertisements and all are driven by the social networks. So I mean at one point of time it was maybe the advertisement on the search engines. Now it has become advertising on the social media. So people pay a fortune to get things advertised on Facebook and to target people on Facebook and all. So this was the popularity of social networks, and also a lot changed for the researchers. First of all, the huge data, and it's relatively easily available. You no longer have to go and do surveys of 500 or 600 people. You can you can write a computer program and get data of 1 million people. Also the data is usually more reliable, because think about it, if I go in the offline world and ask you, tell me who are your friends and tell me the 5 best friends. First of all, you might not be able to remember all of them. Next, you would not be willing to offend the others by telling who are your 5 best friends. These kind of things, like human factors come in these surveys. Those surveys are definitely necessary for some other things, but just for collection of data, it's easier or more accurate to automatically get data. So I can immediately figure out that maybe on Facebook, with whom have you interacted most in the last month or so, and based on that I can define who are your closest friends. And so we have seen this earlier. We have these 3 V's of big data, and all of them are present in social media. Like I mean, it's petabytes of user generated content every day, and a huge variety of the data, and also velocity. When something important happens, especially like say elections in the US and all, we have actually seen that thousands of posts are possible per minute. So velocity is really like, sometimes we do not like so much velocity, it's to that extent. So because of all these, there has been a huge multidisciplinary research going on social networks. These are just some of the fields which are contributing. Maybe the technology, the social networks technology is being developed by computer networks and distributed systems people, because it's, I mean, these systems are known to be real time. So that what someone posts in a faraway land has to come to your timeline in a few seconds or more, less than that. So there are huge network or distributed systems challenges also. Then we have sociology, social psychology. I'm not going into details. We have had lots of talk here. There are network science, usually who do the theoretical studies on large graphs or large networks, that is network science or complex network theory. And there are fields like data mining, machine learning and all. I have clubbed them all together because usually these deal with the data. Now of course, there are a lot of overlaps. Like there are many studies which use both the network and the data, right? So, but in general these are some of the fields, and still some there might be others. Okay, so in the first part of this talk, I'll just informally talk about some of the research issues, and it will also help to understand like maybe some of the properties of these social networks. So as I was telling you, there are many sociological theories which have been developed on offline networks. They have been validated on social networks, on online social networks, I must say. Things like strength of weak ties, homophily, and so on. So this was an interesting study. So as I said, so an interesting question can be, how do conventions spread in a social network? Again, this is a study which is traditionally difficult to do in an offline setting, because often conventions are kind of like people do them without first realizing when they first did it. But if you have digital footprint of say tweets being posted and all, then it's easy to figure out who was the first person who did this, then it spread to whom, and so on. So this was an interesting study where they studied the convention of retweeting in Twitter. So they had a log of all tweets in Twitter posted till a particular point of time, I think in 2000. Yeah, so the data set is all tweets from the start of Twitter to 2011 they had, and they studied the convention of retweeting. So retweeting in Twitter, the most popular convention is to do via, RT. You put an RT in front of the tweet and you then retweet. But there were other conventions earlier. For example, via. Via was another way of doing a retweet. So initially when Twitter started, first couple of years, there were different conventions of retweeting. Ultimately, this convention of RT dominated and became almost the de facto standard. So how did that happen? So how did several conventions spread, and ultimately one of them became the de facto standard? That was the goal of their study. So and also, so as I said, different studies have tried to compare between offline social networks and online social networks. And of course, there are many similarities. However, some differences have been observed. And they are because of some reasons. For example, so I think all of you have heard of a Dunbar number. So Dunbar number is usually a number around 120, and it says that for a human being, it's difficult to have more than 120 meaningful relationships or meaningful social links. But that meaningful is a loaded term. What do you mean by meaningful? So okay, so this theory came from offline social networks, that usually someone would not have meaningful relationships with more than 120 people. But think of Twitter, Facebook and all, people have thousands of links. And that is typically because the cost of maintaining a social link is close to zero, right, on an online setting. Also, geographical distance does not matter. So you might be someone in India and someone in US, you might be interacting every day. So let me show you a nice picture. So this is a locality of friendships in Facebook. As you see, so as you understand, the brighter portions have more Facebook users, which is kind of understandable. US, Europe, India also has quite a large population. But if you see these, so these kind of arcs, these are showing intercontinental friendships on Facebook, and they are quite a lot, much more than what you would expect in an offline setting. Right, so there are many people in Europe and say US, Europe and US, and even Europe and parts of Latin America who are close friends on Facebook. They interact very regularly. This is difficult to achieve in an offline world. Okay. So, okay, next I would go in a bit of technicality, but again keep it very limited. So one thing is to study the sociological issues, and that is typically done on graph models of social networks. So social networks are typically represented as a graph or a network, where users are typically nodes or vertices, and the relationships between them, the social links, are the edges or links. And there are different varieties of networks, like Facebook is an undirected network. So if you are a friend, so if A is a friend of B, B is also a friend of A. It's a mutual friendship. Whereas Twitter is an unidirectional network. You can follow, say, Sachin Tendulkar, but Sachin Tendulkar does not need to follow you, right? So it's a unidirectional network. And other slightly more complex models have been tried. Some examples are here. So this is called a bipartite network, where there are two sets of nodes. Let's give an example. Say users watch videos on YouTube. So let's say these are users and these are videos, and you put a link between a user and a video if that user has watched the video. Right, so these kind of bipartite networks have been studied, and they are pretty useful, as in they are practically used. So any idea what this can be used? Okay, I'll come back later. Okay, so these are bipartite networks. If you think, oh, this is too much complex, let me just show you another picture. This is a tripartite hypergraph. Okay, so few years back, a kind of social networks became popular, which were known as social tagging sites or folksonomies. That was the term used. Things like Delicious, Flickr, and so on. So there, users tagged items with tags, or users annotated items with tags. For example, Flickr was about photos. So there were photos on Flickr, and there were users. Users associated tags with the photos. Right. So for example, there is a photo of, say, Taj Mahal, users went and annotated that with, say, Taj Mahal, Agra, monument, and so on. So there are now 3 types of elements: users, tags, and photos. To model such networks, tripartite hypergraphs came. Let's not go into details. Okay. So this is an extension of the bipartite network, but here every edge connects 3 vertices, which is not the norm in the normal graphs that we study. Anyway. Okay. So now these different network models have been proposed for networks, and people have studied different properties of those large graphs. So as I said, there is this field called network science or complex network theory, which studies properties of large graphs. As properties, by properties I mean statistical properties. For example, degree distributions. So degree distributions, again, I am not going into details. Typically it would mean that suppose you take all the nodes in the graph and you measure their degree, and then you draw a histogram of the degrees, right? So what fraction of nodes have degrees less than 10? What fraction of nodes have degrees between 10 and 20? What fraction of nodes have degree between 20 and 30, and so on, right? So in general, any ideas like how would a degree distribution of a social network look like? For example, do you expect more nodes having degree less than 10, or do you expect more nodes having degree, say, more than 500?
Social networks, this is a bit of a different.
Yeah, let's focus on social networks here.
I think there would be more number of people who have friends greater than 10, or at least within the range of 10 and 500.
Okay, any different opinion? So okay, when answering this question, maybe we think of our friends. Yeah, I mean, this is, by the way, this is the common psychology that every friend of mine has more friends than I have. That's known to be a common psychology. Actually, it can't be. It's a paradox. It can't be. If everyone thinks, or everyone thinks that all my friends have more friends than I have, but if that were true, I mean, there would be a paradox. So okay, so when answering this question, usually people go by that mindset, but the truth is actually very different. There are a huge lot of inactive users on any social network. So the fraction of nodes having degrees, say, less than 10, even 0 or 1, is much higher than the fraction of nodes having degrees, say, more than 100 or something. And it's not even a linear drop, it's an exponential kind of a drop. Okay. So again, I'm not going into details, but yeah. Then another thing is triangles. What do you? So okay, I put in here presence of numerous triangles. In a social network, usually there are lots of triangles. Are you surprised, or is it something to be expected? It's kind of expected, because usually, again, statistically speaking, if you have 2 friends, they have a high probability of knowing each other. Again, it's not true, I mean always. Maybe one of your school friends and one of your friends at MSR would not know each other possibly. But if you think, you will have many school friends who will know each other, so there will be a lot of triangles around you. So among all your friends, there will be many pairs who know each other or who are friends to each other. So usually social networks have a lot of triangles. And by the way, so we need to do computation on these large networks. If you remember, Priti was talking about doing search on large networks. So there is a KDD paper. KDD is the top conference in data mining. There is a KDD paper on efficiently counting triangles in a social network. Just this much. But I mean, that's a really, technologically that's a huge challenge. In a network of the size of, say, Facebook, billion nodes, counting triangles is also a pretty difficult challenge.
And this paper tries to count it exactly or approximately?
Approximately, yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone would try accurately. As I said, so 6 degrees of separation. Again, another term to use is small world. So I think we use this as a part of a common English. So we go to a faraway place and still meet a friend of ours. We say, oh, it's a small world. So again, there are technical meanings of what small world is. I'm not going into them. But typically, it usually means that even if a network is very large, there are lots of nodes or vertices. Even then, if you pick 2 nodes or users, you will find a short path between them. Yes?
looking at, say, like the connected components of the graph.
Yes.
Right? Because if you
Yes.
have these pockets which are,
Right.
then does this, on average, is it still?
Oh, so people changed the definition of shortest path a bit, and it said that if there is no path, so it's 1 by that. So if there is no path between two nodes, take this as infinity, therefore it contributes 0 to the average. Things like these are tried out. But you are right that this is assuming that a graph is connected. Yes. And by the way, let me clarify one thing. I am not trying to say that you pick any two nodes in the graph that will have a distance of less than 6. No. Maybe if you pick me and say Donald Trump, the distance would be much larger, and I'm okay. Maybe okay. So maybe another person as infamous as I am, then there will be a lot of huge distance. There might be a huge distance. But again, we are talking of statistical terms. Let's say the mathematically correct statement would be that 99% of all shortest pair distances would be less than 6. Right. Okay. And there is this homophily which I told you about, that birds of a feather flock together. In technical terms, there are terms like assortativity and all, which I am not going into. By the way, like again, homophily and all also depends upon the character. So when I say the nodes of similar nodes are usually connected, it will depend upon what characteristics you are looking for. For example, these studies have been done, like if you look for okay, so let's say in Facebook, the study which I was telling you, which studied the Facebook network, they found that Facebook network is heavily assortative, or there is lot of homophily based on certain properties, whereas it is not so homophily, there is not so much homophily based on some other properties. For example, if you think about, let's say in an offline world also, if you think about gender, then maybe the network won't be that much. If you think about romantic relationships and the property that you study is gender, then the network will not be at all homophily. There will be no homophily in the network. There will be very small amount of homophily. But if you think about, say, age, usually people of the same age group are more friends. So that was what was seen in Facebook also. If you consider age of the users, then the network shows very high homophily. However, if you consider gender and all, then homophily is not that much, right? Okay. So these are all different network properties which people study on networks, typically studying statistical properties of large graphs. Okay. So this picture I have shown you earlier. So this was this friendship network among US students in an US school. So now you see that there are 3 types of nodes: white, black, and others. So actually, these researchers went to these students and asked for their race, like white, black, and other, and whom they are friends with and all. If you see, most of the white nodes here, they form connected groups. They are very closely connected in the social network, whereas the blacks are here, these two. Right. So so actually you can see 4 densely connected parts in the network: 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are usually called communities. Okay. So a densely connected part of the network, which is a lot more closely connected inside that part than with the others, than with the rest of the network. That's usually called communities. So first of all, so this network would be quite like highly assortative, or there is large homophily here according to race. According to race, and usually there are these communities. So white students are forming 1 or 2 communities, blacks are forming others, and so on. Of course, social networks are difficult to study because lot of factors get built. For example, I might ask, why did all the white students, why did they not belong to the same community? That might be a question to ask. Maybe these were of different classes, maybe these were junior school students, maybe these were high school students, and so on. So actually many factors come into play when we decide whom to be friends with or whom to closely interact, and that makes study of these social networks difficult. Okay, let me not go into this slide much. So a set of statistical properties have been seen for the social networks. Now people have tried to come up with models as to how come these networks look like this. See, typically if you think of people randomly connecting with each other, then you will not get a network like this. The network will look very different. But social networks do not look like random networks. Rather, they have specific properties. So, so they try to model human behavior as to how come these networks are forming. So, I will just describe one briefly. So, if you see this thing, preferential attachment, is possibly one of the most famous models of how social networks or networks develop, and it says something simple. When a new user joins a social network, he or she is looking for whom to connect. The probability of this new user connecting to a already popular user is higher. So, the probability with which this new user connects to another user is proportional to how popular that existing user is. Right. Again, these are statistical models. Don't expect that every user does like this, but typically it is seen that these kind of networks, this kind of models can explain some of the properties of the networks, though that must be taken with a pinch of salt. I would just point out one thing in this in this slide without going into technical details. If you see these years, 1999, etc., these models are only considering the network structure. So, they try to explain human behavior based on graph properties. So, I will see how popular a user is, then I will connect. But going down, you see co-evolution of social and content networks, 2012. So, these more recent models start saying things like, not only will we look at the graph or who is more popular and all, but I also look at the content. Does that person post on a topic I am interested in? Right, maybe there is a politician and a movie actor, both are very famous. Even then, if I am interested more in movies than politics, I am more likely to connect to the movie actor. So, there is a content network also apart from the social network, and they are co-evolving. Right. So, these are slightly more complicated models, but it has been found that these models explain more properties than maybe only the network dependent models. Okay. Now, another thing is always comes that do these properties remain constant over time? I mean, some properties do, but many don't. For example, by the way, understand that these social networks are highly dynamic. Every day maybe thousands of people are joining Facebook. Maybe tens of thousands of new links are being created. Even then, the Facebook network is so large that these are all delta changes. It does not usually change the overall statistical properties of the network, even though this is happening every day. But then over a period of time, maybe if you consider 3 years, 4 years, 10 years, then maybe some properties of change. For example, these studies have noticed that like network density, assortativity, they vary, and the variation is complex, as in it is not monotonic. Sometimes they increase at some stages of the network, then they decrease, and so on. In fact, people have, so by the way, people have studied behavior of users, then they have not stopped there. Now, maybe some like Leskovich, so Julia Leskovich at Stanford, that group has they collect lot of data. So, now they have generated over studying networks, they have generated studying users, and they are now studying properties of networks as a whole. So, think of a social network, a new social network comes into being, maybe it becomes popular for some time, but after all there is a decay. For Facebook and Twitter, we are still not seeing the decay, though some newspaper reports point out that Twitter is decaying even then. Maybe for Facebook and Twitter we are not seeing the decay, but maybe some of you remember things like Orkut. At one point of time it was very popular, now it has decayed. So properties of networks change over time if you take a long enough time. So maybe Orkut was very dynamic once, but now it is no longer dynamic. So different properties evolve, and the properties themselves evolve over time, not only the network. And there have been many models to explain these kind of temporal variations. So I guess this is similar to like some of the questions we have heard in other talks. How does a society collectively move towards something, or how does something stop in a society? So these kind of questions have also been studied. Okay. Now, there have been studies on different types of links. One of them I told you, strong and weak links. So, how to distinguish between, or how to classify between a strong link and a weak link? Suppose there is this link between two users, how to understand whether it's strong or weak? So, those kind of things have been studied. Also, there have been some kind of fun social networks which allow both positive and negative links. That means these networks allow you to indicate some people as friends and some people as enemies. So, those networks have also been studied, but for some reason they have not become very popular, probably because you do not want to tag someone as an enemy, right. So, these networks have not usually grown to that extent. And yes, so again, strength of links vary with time. You can understand that in the offline world also. Maybe in this workshop, the first day, how many people did we talk with? Whereas now the strengths of the links have grown over time. So these things have also been studied. Okay. This is another type of question which is important, that how important is a node in the network, right. So, for example, suppose you want to start a movement, you want to start a social movement, then you will have to get some thought leaders or people who are influential in society on your side. So, who are the influentials in a society? And again, say when we do web search, Google or Bing, we want important web pages to be returned. So, the web pages which are returned at say top of the results, they should be relevant to what the query is, plus they should be important, right. So, it's an important question, practical important question to ask, that which are the nodes or which users are important in a social network. And there have been many proposed measures or metrics on measuring how popular a node is. Let me not go into much detail, only let me just quickly say. So, degree centrality you can understand. If a node is of high degree, it should be important. Like if someone has lots of friends on Facebook, if someone has millions of followers on Twitter, then that node or that person is really important. But that's only one sort of centrality, degree centrality. There are others like say betweenness centrality. Let me just quickly explain using a figure. So, if you see this network, look at these two nodes A and B. Their degree is quite low. I mean, there are many other nodes in this network which have higher degree than A and B. However, A and B has very high what is called betweenness centrality. The way betweenness centrality is measured is, okay, I mean, simplistically A and B are bridge nodes. They are bridging between two communities. So, again technically, if you take the shortest paths between all different pairs of nodes, most of those shortest paths pass through A and B, because you take one node here and one node there in that component, find out the shortest path, it has to pass through A and B, right. So, that is why this A and B have high betweenness centrality, they are between many other nodes, right. So, I have a question for you. Can you think of a situation where you think that nodes like A and B which have high betweenness centrality are more important than nodes with high degree centrality? Let us say maybe these are nodes with high degree centrality, maybe high degree, whereas A and B have high betweenness centrality. Can you think of any application where A and B would be more important?
Which yourself said that looking for a new job or something, want to go outside of your
Yes.
reach to find new people.
So, often these nodes are they form the link between two communities. So, if some information was born in this community, whether it will go over to another community depends upon nodes like this A and B, and they have very important implications. For example, it has been seen that something going viral, for something to go, for any song or video to go viral, it has to cross these links. Usually every information is born in a certain community. Whether it is adopted or whether it becomes popular among different communities depends upon maybe these users who are forming the bridges between communities. Okay. Another application is, suppose you are an advertiser you're a company which wants to advertise your product, so you can target few people in the network. Now ideally you would say I want to target everyone, but practically that's not possible, because you will have to pay Facebook to target few people. If you want to say your budget allows only targeting 100 people and not 10,000. So which 100 people would you target? These are good candidates for targeting, because if you can influence them, they can relay the information to 2 communities instead of 1. Whereas targeting this person, even if he is influenced by your product and wishes to endorse it, maybe he can communicate the information only to his community. Whereas these bridge nodes, they usually can reach out to multiple communities, right? Okay. So as I said, there are different centrality metrics. You must have heard of PageRank. So very simplistically, if I say, so suppose there are 2 nodes which have equal degree, but so according to degree centrality, they are equally important. However, someone might say that all links are not equal. Maybe someone has 5 friends, so say two people who have 5 friends, but for one, those 5 friends are heavily influential, whereas for the other user, the 5 friends are his classmates. So both have degree 5, but then one is much more influential than the other. Right, so this is typically the reason why, say, students take recommendations while applying for grad school or someone. And recommendations are not taken from classmates, they are taken from important people. Okay, so that's why a link from an important person is more important than a link from a non-important person. So PageRank basically goes towards, takes those things into account. Not only how many links you have, but also with whom are you linked to. Right. Again, there are sociological theories like a man and a woman also maybe is known by the company he or she keeps. So those kind of theories. Okay. So yeah, okay. So another thing is, this is like community detection. So communities are, as I said, subgroups of the graph which are densely connected. So for example, if I take this summer school, summer workshop as an example, there are typically say 5 communities here, I might say. That does not mean that there is no interaction between people from one community and the other. That does not mean that, but definitely within a community interaction is much more than between communities, say. So intra-community interaction is much more than say inter-community. Right. And also there have been different sociological theories on all communities are not the same. Typically there is a well-known distinction between bond-based community and okay, I forgot the term, wait. Okay, so bond-based community means the community consists of personal social links, like a family. Whereas the other thing, I'm sorry, I've forgotten the term, is basically people who are interested in the same topic. So think about it. So people who have gone to see a football match, they have a lot of interactions, but that is not because they are personal friends. Maybe they are interested in the same match or same topic. So there are differences between different kinds of communities also. So this is just an ideal picture of how communities in a graph look like. There are these densely connected components and the rest of the network is very sparse. But again, this is an idealistic picture. Practical picture is this. So finding communities is also difficult, right? Okay. Okay. So, okay, I have reached a slightly logical breakpoint in the talk. So till now, all the problems that I was telling you, or the issues or the properties, they are all based on the network. So the statistical properties of the networks, how popular a node is, and so on. But as I was telling you in the beginning, social networks contain both the network and the content, the text content, the videos, the images being uploaded and all. So next I would go towards some problems which use the content more. So let me tell you of an interesting study. So by the way, I'm sure none of you observed, but The title of my talk is wrong if you go by the agenda. The agenda says I'll be talking on social media analysis, whereas I am talking on social network analysis. What's the difference? I think you have heard both these terms, like social media and social network. Often the difference is subtle, and often from a practical sort of point of view, the difference is small. But usually when we talk of a social network, we tend to think of a place where personal interactions are going on. There are friends who are gossiping with each other and so on. It's a social network. Whereas when the term media comes in, it becomes more of an information-centric description. A media, like a newspaper or TV, its main purpose is not social interactions, but to give some information to people. So there was this very influential study in 2010 in the World Wide Web Conference, which asked this question. This was a study from KAIST in Korea. Is Twitter a social network or a social media? And they did lots of statistical analysis. So when we say social network, we expect certain properties, like there will be a lot of triangles, there will be community structure, it will be associative, and so on. Whereas when you say of a social media, the expectation is different. Social media would mean there are maybe few information producers and lot of consumers. So think about it. In the offline world, there are few newspapers, but there are many consumers. Whereas in a social network, everyone can consume, everyone can produce, social interactions are going on, like friends gossiping. So friends gossiping among themselves versus a newspaper, where the content is produced by only a few journalists maybe, and it is consumed by a lot of people. These are the two views, social network and social media. Now that study in 2010 concluded that Twitter is more of a social media than a social network. Whereas Facebook, there have been more studies after that, Facebook is more of a social network. Right. And if you think about it, the very definition of a link in these two mediums kind of justify that. In Facebook, you become a friend to a person, that person also becomes your friend. Whereas in Twitter, you follow a person. The motivation is to get the tweets that person has posted. That person might not follow you back, he might be a celebrity. Right. So the motivation of Twitter is to give you information, not maybe social gossiping. So that is the kind of distinction between social network and media. However, both exist simultaneously, and most of the research studies use both. Before going to the studies, let me just tell you of something. So we have heard of some theories in different talks of this workshop. So you might think, for explaining those theories, you have, so for the earlier talks in this workshop, the focus has been on the content, right? Whereas you might think that the network is another channel of information. Let me give you a couple of examples. We have heard of this in-group, out-group theory, whether you are in-group with someone or out-group. So we have heard of things like you usually change your language whether you want to be in-group or out-group, and so on. Another way of figuring whether you are in-group or out-group is this kind of community analysis. Maybe if you are in a tightly clustered place, you have lots of common friends, then you are in-group. So the person whom you are talking to, if you have lots of common friends and all, maybe you are already in the in-group. So you will talk with him differently than someone who is in a different community with whom you do not have many common friends. So that's one, another way of maybe figuring out whether someone is in-group or out-group. Another reason, another theory which we have heard heard in different talks in this workshop is the what's that theory called? You try to accommodate the accommodation theory. Yes. So suppose two persons are talking. So this theory tells us, okay, both will possibly try to accommodate to the other, but will it be equal? If A and B are talking, A will try to accommodate to B style and B will try to accommodate to A style. Will it be equal? Maybe not. It depends upon the social influence or the social, how famous that person is. We have heard things like more famous a person, less polite he needs to be. Monojit was talking about this, the Christian Niculescu Danescu missile study. So that means these linguistic styles often depend upon how popular you are in the social network, which can be figured out using centrality metrics maybe, like degree centrality and other things.
What would be the kind of a correlation between the popularity, the centrality of your popularity and a power structure? Does it like correlate to power structure?
So I think Christian had another study. By the way, he was at MPI also. So luckily I can refer to him as with his first name and not say Niculescu Danescu missile. Okay. So
You can say that.
yeah. I mean I had to. Yeah. Okay, so Christian had another study where he studied texts written by judges in US courts. So judges in US courts have a strict power hierarchy structure. There are some kind of head judges or more senior judges, whereas there are less jury members and lesser stuff, say. So and there was a distinct, that study was not done using networks. That was a pure natural language or linguistic based study. But it was shown that the lesser judges try to accommodate more to the style of the more powerful judges, whereas the opposite is much lesser. So how much someone would try to accommodate to another person often depends upon these power hierarchies in the society. Which, I mean, another way of understanding that would be the network or the social network. Okay, so with that interlude kind of thing, I would just go to some of the topics which utilize the information content in the OSNs. Again, it's quite mixed. These studies usually use both the information content as well as the network. So search and recommendation, these are increasingly becoming popular in online social networks. The one reason, if you think, is that suppose, so these networks like Facebook and Twitter, they have grown so much that suppose an old friend of yours joins Facebook, you have no way of knowing that unless Facebook tells you. So Facebook gives you these recommendations, right? That hey, this person joined Facebook, maybe you will like to connect to him. Or maybe you are on Amazon, you are looking for products, some product. Maybe there is an alternative product which is cheaper and yet of the equal quality. You have no way of knowing that because of so many products in Amazon. So either you will have to search or Amazon will have to recommend to you that hey, there is another product which is kind of equal but cheaper, so you might take that. So as these networks have become so large in size, search and recommendation are becoming very important from practical applications also. Unless a social network gives you recommendations today, it won't be successful. It will simply not be popular. And the basis of all these social recommendations is this, that friends are likely to have similar tastes. If you think this is the same homophily principle, birds of a feather flock together kind of thing. So the usual assumption is you and your friends will have more or less common tastes. So let me just show you a graphic. Sorry. This was a kind of survey. Which of the following forms of advertising is more effective at influencing you to make a purchase? Banner display ads, celebrity endorsers, print ads, TV commercials, friend recommendations. Because our friends are people whom we trust. If they have recommended something, possibly I'll also like it because their tastes are kind of similar to mine, right? So that's the power of friend recommendations. So many things can be recommended, new friends, which groups you would like to join, videos and so on. Let me give you this example. This is the recommendation of books in Amazon. I have many times felt I would change this slide to something more interesting, but it still remains that C programming book. Anyway, I've been lazy, sorry. So this is a standard recommendation page on Amazon. Focus on this line. Customers who bought this item also bought these books. So these are being recommended to you. You are checking out this book and these are being recommended to you. The explanation is this: customers who bought this item also bought these books. So what's going on? Why is Amazon recommending these books?
Other people bought the book. No?
Pardon?
It just says there other people bought those books.
Yes.
So
So
they assume
the
it's the same.
assumption here is that people who have bought this item would also be interested in these items. Therefore, they must be similar. Right. Now think about it. Instead of this, okay. So Amazon has quite a good success. I mean, Amazon has a good business model, I guess. They have lots of recommendations. But think about it. Instead of this line, if I tell you 3 of your friends also bought these items, the impact would be much higher. Like customers who bought this item also bought this is okay, but if I tell you that 3 of your friends, and maybe I give the names, also bought this book, then the impact would be much higher. You are more likely to check out that book also and maybe buy it.
Has there been a study on the link of which you are saying this?
Study based on?
So,
Okay, not for Amazon. I'm not aware for that because these companies I don't publish much papers, but in social networks and all the impact of social recommendations is well studied, and I can't remember exact numbers, but okay, you have yeah.
Advertisements are now really integrated into the social network business. So you were saying that.
I'm not aware of a study because usually those data are such that they can't be published, things like this. So I'm not aware of a study, but it's a common notion. Like that is why most of the social networks are shifting towards social recommendations. So usually recommendations have like some broad categories. Let's say collaborative filtering is like based on figure out other users who have possibly similar tastes like yours. That's collaborative filtering. And another genre of recommendation is content based. Like you have bought this item, maybe these other items are similar to that item, therefore I will recommend to you. So collaborative filtering is going a bit out of date. I shouldn't say that. The thing is, social networks have become so large that in case of collaborative filtering, as if you have to do an analysis on the whole matrix of the network or on all the users. That is no longer possible because the networks are so large. So only focus on the friends of the user, maybe 2 hops or 1 hop. That is a quick way, but it gives very powerful recommendations. Yes.
So I don't think I've ever bought anything that was recommended to me by Amazon. I'm not sure that I'm a knowledge person or that's this kind of thing. I go to Amazon because they have, great service and they sell everything under the roof. But I don't think I've ever bought anything per se recommended to me.
So I have just the opposite experience. So when I search books, I go to each and every book that Amazon says customer who bought this book also bought this, especially in popular science, which I search the most, or a little more technical than popular science. So I find a lot of very interesting related books, like on language, endangered languages. I know probably one name, like 20 other names out there, and some of them are.
So I'm in the middle. I never buy a book recommended by Amazon because I find them really weird recommendations. But I buy a lot of toys that they recommend because I really have no way of knowing how many 60,000 toys there are in this world. So if I know that there's this Lego Nexo Knight that my son is interested in, and then Amazon recommends like 60 other kinds of Lego Nexo things, then I would probably go buy one or two.
So in one way, Amazon doesn't have the social network. Like it's not maintaining any kind of social network. So the only source of information Amazon has is our search history, like what things I have been searching, and these kind of things that common customers have bought this item. But like things like Facebook and all mediums who have the social network, they are increasingly moving towards utilizing the social network for recommendation.
So I think that's what is the thing. So for books, I have a different network which I trust, and I'm pretty plugged into it, right? But for toys, I'm not. I don't have a social network that will tell me that buy this also and this also.
Also, I think it depends on the type of the books. I don't think such a I don't know if such a recommendation works that well for fiction, because
for fiction though it just doesn't work.
Exactly.
Even otherwise, I think like Goodreads has better recommendations.
Yeah.
So and there are like forums and places that you
Goodreads is anyway dedicated to
Dedicated.
the
books.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. There is a better network for certain things, but for certain things I don't have.
But sometimes, so when I try to look for historical books on Indian classical music, I hardly find anything on Goodreads. But Amazon have very nice recommendations.
Maybe it might be very specific, but normally I find Amazon book recommendations very weird.
It's also the utility of the recommendation on different websites is different. So Goodreads mainly works on recommendations, while Amazon works on the size of its repository. So like he said, a lot of people, there are different kinds of people. Some people don't know what they want, so they rely on recommendations. And some people know exactly what they want to buy. So they would go to Amazon, they just go find the thing that they want to buy it and exit the website without even looking at the recommendation. So I know some people in my friend group, including myself, who don't even know that there are recommendations because they never looked at this place.
No, so I think what Saptarshi is saying is really relevant here, that if you have a strong social network that provides you that information or that recommendation, then you probably are not going to use this. And if you don't,
Which happens in Make My Trip.
yeah,
TripAdvisor. When you go, it says so many of your friends have been there and reviewed, and I invariably go and read them.
Yes, same here. Like especially for hotels and
But that's scary that the TripAdvisor knows who your friends are.
Facebook is done.
So you give them the.
Like most people are lazy enough to create separate accounts. Just say log in with Google
Yes.
or log in with
Yes.
Facebook for
Yes.
most of that.
Yeah.
And I have just given up.
Invariably
With
gets
any
trust.
Okay, it's got to do with the trust that you place with a link with a known friend and with someone else.
Also depends on it.
Yeah, of course. Okay, I have an interesting story to share about recommendations, but I'll postpone it for some time. Okay. Like search and recommendation, another important thing to study on social networks is the spread or diffusion of information. Here are some of the questions which usually are interesting. So, I mean, this thing is quite difficult. How does a topic or video become viral? There have been some studies which have tried to figure this out, but then a large part of the conclusion has been it's difficult to predict. I mean, something takes on the imagination of the population and then it becomes viral. It's not always socially explainable why something becomes viral. And definitely the content does not explain it. So there are as many or better items, maybe movies, songs, which do not become viral compared to something which becomes viral. Okay. No, this is another picture, how a viral image spread in Facebook. Right. So anyway. This thing I have already talked about earlier, but I'm going to look at this in a new light. Identifying influential users. So we have talked about centrality measures and all, and there have been several centrality measures used on social networks like Twitter also. However, how if I tell you I want influential people in politics, then the graph alone will not tell you. Sure, politicians have lots of links, their degree of centrality is pretty high and so on, but how to tell you that this person is a expert on politics? That only the graph won't tell you. For that you need the content also. So there have been several studies which tried to identify topical experts. There have been studies from MSR, like Scott Counts, I think he's in Redmond, I'm not sure. He has one study, and we had one study where we identified topical experts on Twitter. So there we used a nice combination of content and networks. So usually what people did earlier is that they try, so suppose we have a user, so we have some content for him, like the tweets he has posted, what information he has in his profile and so on. The prior studies tried to infer whether he is an expert on this topic from this content, the tweets he has posted or what he has put in the profile and all. But typically tweets are noisy, people have very incomplete profiles, therefore these methods were successful to a degree. We used a social way of figuring out topical experts. There was a feature called Twitter lists, by which you can create a list called, say, politicians and add other members to the list. Say you create a list called politicians and you add, say, Barack Obama, Trump, Clinton, these people to the list. Okay. That tells us, that gives us a social way of understanding. Many other people are telling that you are an expert on politics, because they have created lists called politics, politicians and so on, and have added you to the list. That means many other people are willing to hear what you are posting on politics. So you must be an expert on politics. That was our way of figuring out this, and we showed that at least in, so this we had published in Sigaya 2012. As of 2012, so we built a small system, a search system on Twitter for topical experts. As of 2012, that system performed better than Twitter's search engine for a large number of topics as judged by human volunteers. But later on, so at that point of time, Twitter did not use the lists feature. So when I was presenting this work in Sigayar, the Twitter search head was there among the audience. So he came up and talked to me that, okay, this is a nice thing and we have not explored this yet. But in few months, Twitter started using lists also, and now their search engine is much better, of course. Okay, so that was, so again, so the key question is here. So the graph can tell you whether a person is an influential or a popular person, but topic specific expertise, if you want to evaluate, then you will have to resort to the content also. And that's what I am saying. Many studies use both the network and the content. Okay. Another very well known field of research is the emotion or opinion mining. So, and it has many applications, whether a movie would be successful or not. So, trying to figure out trying to get the public opinion automatically from the social network. Again, because it is, so the traditional way is to conduct surveys. Surveys often give you lot of detailed information, but they are expensive to conduct. Therefore, more and more companies are going towards understanding opinion about their products from social networks automatically. And even Twitter has been used to predict election results. So there have been both types of papers which try to predict election results using Twitter data and claim that they are successful. And there have also been papers which have simply trashed this, that no point trying this is not possible. And the same goes for stock market. There have been papers which have tried to correlate stock market with Twitter, mood on Twitter and so on. And there have been some other papers which have said just stop them, it's not correlated. Okay, so there is a lot of opinion among these opinion mining studies also. Okay. This, I guess, possibly the most popular study on social networks is on spam detection. So as these social networks become more and more popular, more and more spam comes in, and spammers have different techniques. For example, Sybils. Anyone is familiar with the term Sybils? So Sybils are when one spammer creates a lot of accounts. So typically a lot of accounts controlled by a single spammer, those are called Sybil accounts. So Sybil accounts, so normal spam has been kind of there are good classifiers now for normal spam accounts, but then people have shifted to spammers have shifted to Sybil accounts, creating Sybil accounts and all. So a large challenge for today's social networks is to stop Sybil accounts. And if you imagine, if you have observed, over the years, creating an account has become difficult. At one point, anyone maybe could create an account on Facebook. Then they started linking it with an email ID. Then they started linking it with a phone number. They will send you an OTP and all. A lot of these efforts are to stop Sybil accounts, so that one person cannot create a whole army of accounts. Okay. And by the way, Sybil accounts are used for very strange purposes. So before the last US election, there were reports that a certain politician, not Trump, but a certain politician had, so in US, Twitter is so popular that even in election propaganda, candidates go and say, I have so many followers in Twitter, that's why I am more popular, vote for me. So many people listen to what I say. So there was this report that one candidate had actually bought a large number of followers in Twitter. So basically he bought Sybil accounts. So there are marketplaces where you can go and buy Sybil accounts.
So I know similar studies in China also which people have done. Have there been studies in India?
About what?
Politicians using Twitter
Okay.
as a medium
I am not aware.
propaganda.
But
In China, it's
so,
a very
so use of social media in Indian politics has just started, maybe last couple of years. So,
No, I saw articles in newspapers
Okay.
which are qualitative.
okay, I am not aware of these any studies. It would be nice to do it, yeah.
No, but in China, like Noah did the China thing. Yeah. So most of the people are from outside who did the China stuff. But in the US, people did their own.
Yeah.
But I mean, China and India is slightly. China is one this thing, India is probably in the middle. But you get attacked if you don't. I can imagine. Yeah, I mean, look at the NDTV thing and all, right? People might. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So the other utility of social networks on which this our project is also based is that Twitter especially has become very important sources of real-time information on events. So here is a comic strip. So it says that when there is an earthquake, what will reach you first? You will first feel the tremors of the earthquake, or you will first get a tweet saying there is an earthquake. Okay, so that's the comic strip. The conclusion is finally that, sadly, a Twitter user's first instinct is not to find shelter, but to tweet that there is an earthquake. Okay, so this comic strip, at least I came to know of it in 2010. So hopefully it was published then. So it was a nice comic strip. People laughed about it and all. In a few months, there was this paper in World Wide Web 2010, which showed that this is no longer a comic strip, but this is the reality. So this study was done by a group from Japan. Japan has lots of small earthquakes, and they have lots of tech-savvy users with smartphones and Twitter accounts and all. So they created a real-time event detection by social sensors. Typically means users on Twitter. So they had this simple system. They were looking for the word like earthquake or the Japanese version of it. If they suddenly see a large spike in that word, temporal. You go on streaming data from Twitter and check how many times the word earthquake is coming, say per minute, per 5 minutes, and so on. If there is a sudden spike in that use of that word, then must be an earthquake. They used a very simple system to detect earthquakes based on that.
Can they also predict on Richter scale?
Maybe not. Yeah. So, but at least they.
Number of people who detect it.
Yeah, exactly. But that is more scientific, therefore it's possibly. But yeah, one thing that when there was this large earthquake in 2012 or 11.
It's a very high intensity earthquake. People will not treat and go to shelter first.
Yeah. No, so actually, yes, so this study did not comment anything about really large earthquakes, but they said that moderate level earthquakes, which human beings can understand, but they do not cause much damage. For those, at least they claim that they can detect the earthquake earlier than the Japan Meteorological Agency. Right. Of course, the Japan Meteorological Agency is more responsible body, so they have to maybe figure out that actually there has been an earthquake. Maybe they don't publish before they figure out the Richter scale, the magnitude and all. But Twitter users, so earthquake. So it,
I was
yeah.
in Japan in 2010,
Okay.
okay? And I was in the middle of the night. I suddenly felt, I was fast asleep. I suddenly felt like something, the building's moving. And I opened my eyes and I saw the entire, the headboard of my bed with the lamp, etc. go like this. And then go like this. And I just shut my eyes and sat there. And I said, no, I'm not dreaming. Then I woke up and I walked out of my hotel room and everything was quiet. Nobody is saying anything. No, noise or anything at all. So I came back and then I felt like maybe I'm so fast asleep. I dreamt the whole thing. I opened Twitter and sure enough, I found like these 20 tweets right there and then saying that earthquake in that area, etc., etc. And I was able to confirm that I wasn't sleeping and dreaming the whole thing. So there was no other information. The hotel staff, nobody was like even bothered. I guess it was a very
Yeah, of course.
the thing moved. The whole
Yeah.
building swayed. everything, but it must have been mild. I think
I
that
mean, maybe in Japan people have got used to that level.
That
of-
level,
Yeah.
It's the equivalent of living near a railway track in India, right? You don't really care about the
shaking.
Anyway, so so this was one study which actually opened people's mind on, oh, this level of real-time information is available. Then that started a lot of studies on actually using Twitter for real-time information and so on. And as that happens, there are more research challenges coming up. For example, sub-events. So often an event is a large collection of different sub-events. So for example, when an earthquake happens or when a natural disaster happens in India, one of the sub-events is that when some prime minister and all or some minister goes there, that creates more news, people get disturbed, that they are actually hampering the relief operations by going there. So those kind of sub-events, or often there are aftershocks. So during the Nepal earthquake, so we know that several aftershocks and the effects that have on the relief operations and all. So these are sub-events which need to be figured out. Even if, like detecting these sub-events is a challenge. And then usually the data is coming so fast and time is critical, so no one has time to read everything, so summarize the information. That is a very strong area of research, like the Qatar Computing Research Institute, who do some large work on disaster, like crisis informatics, that is what they call. They have a lot of focus on summarizing or generating good summaries for during these events. Then again, I've told you about influential users in a social network. I've told you about topic-specific influential users. Similarly, there are event-specific influential users. Maybe these users are not influential in a normal way of looking. They don't have a lot of followers or anything. They are not socially very popular. But then at that point, that person is important because maybe he has some resource or he has some knowledge which others can use. So I can tell you just one anecdote. So on the night when US was conducting the raids on Osama bin Laden's hideout, it was Abbottabad, the name of the place was Abbottabad. There was apparently one user in Abbottabad who was tweeting. He had no knowledge of what is going on, but he was simply tweeting, I can see lots of helicopters or a lot of activity here and so on. And it is said that that night, he was the only source, no journalist was there, nothing. So that night, he got more than 3,000 followers on Twitter because he was this event-specific influential user. He was the only one who was telling something about what is going on.
Because he was middle of the night or something, right? So
Pardon?
the person was awake. I mean, he was the only one also awake.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yes. So these people are usually called community leaders. So there have been studies on identifying community leaders during different events and so on. And finally, so I have put this in because everyone asks me, including Thamar asked me. So okay, we are using Twitter for disaster informatics. Who will say whether the information is genuine or not? That's a very difficult question. So for example, it's so difficult that I have left it aside for now. I'll just show you a couple of example tweets. So I think most of us here are aware of the Chennai floods in 2015. So Chennai has a crocodile bank. And there was a rumor that the flood waters have breached the walls of the crocodile bank and 40 crocodiles are going around the city now. I mean, people just stopped. People just stopped short of clicking selfies with crocodiles and posting. I mean, no one did that, but it was almost like that. So I'm going to show you a couple of tweets. These are actual tweets taken from during that. See, very well written tweets with lots of details on the roads of ECR side Velachery. Okay. Yeah.
I'm sure IT Madras students thought this would be a great joke to put up.
So these are tweets which are praising the rumors, and it's very difficult to figure out that these are not credible. Very well formed tweet with lots of details and all. So there was a recent study in World Wide Web which says that linguistically it's very difficult to figure out that these are not credible, but the social network itself can sometimes help you. If there is a rumor, there will be some people who are questioning it or at least denying it. That can be taken as a signal to at least understand that this might be a rumor. So, true, we found these tweets also. Now, I do not know, linguistically it might be very difficult to build a classifier on these two tweets and the blue ones.
That the
I mean,
blue ones nullify it.
Exactly, or these are false, these are true. It might be difficult to build.
That's possible. I mean, if it's so well formed, it's not hard.
No, but which one will you would you think more credible?
Oh, that's important.
Yeah. No. Okay, you can differentiate, but which one is more correct? That is.
Yeah, but that humans also don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I know today, but at that time I might have.
Yes, exactly. And see, that is the problem. That's why rumor detection is much more difficult than spam detection. Spam has a unique way of posting, and the people have very different characteristics. Whereas in case of rumor, perfectly normal, like maybe people who are quite credible and trustworthy, they are posting this because at that point of anxiety, whatever someone hears, they just forward without verifying. So, like network characteristics and other language characteristics usually find it difficult to distinguish. So, whereas spam detection is a well kind of conquered problem, rumor detection is very difficult. Okay. So, till now was the introduction. Now, seriously, I mean, are you bored? Because after this, I have a couple of studies that we have done. I can briefly introduce you to that, or go on. Okay. So, I'll just briefly describe two studies. One which was primarily done on the social network, and the other which was done mainly on the content. Okay. So, first is this. The name of the paper was link farming in the Twitter social network. So, what is link farming? First, just let me introduce. So, as I said, these in the web, there are lots of search engines like Google, Bing, and all. So, apart from relevance, so suppose you give a query, they have to give you relevant results. Apart from that, they have to give you important results also. So, how to measure the importance of a website, or how to measure the importance of a node in the web graph. And as I said, there are centrality metrics like page rank and so on. Now, spammers have also developed their own methods to beat these methods. So, as I said, Sybils is one method. Another method is called link farming. Typically, the same spammer creates multiple accounts and then link to each other. So, say each account or each node now has lots of other links. Therefore, these algorithms like PageRank get fooled that okay, this node is also important, because typically if say 100 pages are linking to your website, maybe these algorithms would think that your website is important. Now, those 100 accounts are actually, the 100 web pages are actually created by you. So, they are linking to your account. So, that is link farming. So, there are nodes which farm links. Right. Now, again there have been methods which have been found to be quite successful in detecting link farms, and in the web, link farming is more or less a conquered problem. Right. Otherwise, the results would not be so good, right, what we see today. So, link farming is more or less like, sure, the challenges exist, but it is more or less known. But then, no one had studied whether link farming is going on in social networks like Twitter. So, we know there is a lot of spam, but is link farming going on? So, that is why we did this study, and let me tell you a secret, when we started this study, we had no idea that we would be ending up looking at link farming. We had started as a normal project on Twitter spam. Okay. So, we started by identifying a large set of spammers. I am not going into details. Basically, we looked at accounts which have been suspended by Twitter and who had posted a blacklisted URLs. We needed the second step. Also, by the way, so Twitter suspends spam accounts. If people report some account as spam, Twitter suspends that. But we needed this second verification step also, because Twitter is said to suspend some inactive accounts also. So, I mean, account can be suspended because of spam activity or inactivity. So, just to ensure that we were actually studying spam accounts, we saw that they are active and had posted blacklisted URLs. So, you know, your URLs are blacklisted by some services. So, they are like malicious URLs. Okay. So, we had identified about 40,000 spammers in Twitter, and we were studying their network properties. This is what first surprised us, that when we take a random node in the Twitter network, a random user, the average in degree is 36, whereas average in degree for a spammer is 234, much higher. This is not something we would really expect. We won't expect So that means many other people are following spammers. This is not something we were expecting, but still it's okay. Maybe the others are spammers also. Link farming is going on. Spammers have created many accounts which are following their own accounts. So that was our hunch. And then we also saw, so as we saw, a relatively small set of users, few thousands, follow most of these spammers. So these were the people whom we call link farmers. No, they were not, not the spammers per se, but people who were following spammers. So the natural question we asked is, are the link farmers themselves spammers? Otherwise, why would they follow spammers? But then the answer surprised us. We saw that 80% of them are actually real, popular and active users. And it also includes verified accounts. You will be shocked if I tell you some of the names. Let me show you. There was Barack Obama, there was Britney Spears, there was NPR Politics, UK Prime Minister, JetBlue Airways. All these accounts are actually verified and they are following thousands of spammers. So, let's understand this. In general, in a social network, people expect that node A will link to node B if A thinks B is good in some way. So a link is actually a type of vote. That is why if your website has links from 10 other websites, it's as if you have 10 votes. So you must be slightly more important than maybe someone who has just 2 votes. So usually a link is considered as a vote, and if a link comes from an important person, then that vote is much more credible. Remember I was taking the example of taking recommendations from faculty members. So students take recommendations from faculty members because that's a kind of a vote, maybe an endorsement kind of thing, and it's coming from an important person, therefore it's much more credible. So you would expect good people to only link to other good people. All these algorithms like PageRank and all go with this assumption that if many good people are linking, if many good nodes are linking to another node, then that other node is also good. But in Twitter, this seemed absolutely invalid. There were all these verified accounts which were linking to spammers. And so what we found also is that apart from these verified accounts are few, but the majority of these people who were following spammers, they were marketers trying to promote their business. If you look at the other column, maybe this, you would understand. They are into affiliate marketing, interested in tech, social media manager and so on. They are kind of promoting their business. And that explains their behavior. So why are popular users farming links, or why are popular users connecting to spammers? The answer is social etiquette. You follow me, I'll follow you. Like you give me your business card, I'll give you my business card. Similarly on Twitter, it's you follow me, I follow you. And if I go back to the previous slide, you will see some of them tell that. We'll follow back. Well, let's talk soon. So they are telling in their profile, follow me, I'll follow back. So what is the problem? So these people are not doing anything illegal. It's completely within Twitter terms to follow back. But the spammers are taking advantage of them. When a spammer creates an account, they are simply following some of these users like Barack Obama and all, and they are getting back links. What's happening is that the spammer accounts are getting huge values of PageRank and all. Because it's very easy for a spammer account to get a link from Barack Obama. It's easy for a spammer account to get a link from Britney Spears. This is never the case in the web. Like you would not imagine you would not imagine say Google site or Microsoft site to link to a spam site. You would not imagine that. But in social network, we found that Barack Obama, Britney Spears and all, they habitually link to spammers because of this social etiquette. So at that point, Barack Obama was in his presidential campaign days. So he used to follow back. Maybe he was not the one handling the account, but then it was part of the presidential campaign policy. Anyone follows me on Twitter, I'll follow back because I'm also hearing your feedback. He had to give out that vibe. So he followed back. So, and actually we created one account in Twitter and we followed some of these link farmers. So within 9 days, our account reached to within top 2% of Twitter users according to PageRank. Right. So the problem is that, so typically how does a social network deal with spammers? By suspending them. But this study showed that detecting and suspending spammers are not enough, because it's easy for the spammer to create a new account, link to some people, and again rise in the rankings quickly. It takes about a week to come up to Twitter top 2% users according to PageRank. So that leads to ultimately increased spam in Twitter search results, because it's easy to game the system. It's easy to, so Twitter search at that point used PageRank. So it's very easy to game the system just by creating a new account and following some of these link farmers. Okay. So so the challenges was this, that real and popular users are engaged in link farming. Therefore, detecting and suspending spammers won't help. And of course, you can't suspend these real popular users because they are not doing anything illegal. Following back is not illegal. So therefore, we thought that okay, we have to design something to discourage users from following others carelessly. And so we did something which is kind of okay. So that is what we did. We said that we will penalize your score. So every node has a score according to these PageRank type algorithms. We will penalize your score if you are following spammers. Okay. So we proposed this algorithm called collusion rank. I won't go into details. This is kind of reverse of PageRank. So PageRank says that you are good if many good people are following you. We said you will be penalized if you are following many bad people. Right. So PageRank depends upon who all are following you. You are good if many good people are following you. We looked at the opposite side, whom you are following. So we said we will penalize you if you are following bad people. Right, and then we added up like PageRank and collusion rank. So I'm not going into details of the algorithm, but this is just the result. So you see, this is the x-axis is the node rank in percentile, and this y-axis says fraction within a set of users. So this red line is for PageRank. It shows that if you just run PageRank on Twitter network, in the top maybe 10% of the nodes, there are 20% of the spammers. So 20% of the spammers whom we could identify, they are within the top 10% according to PageRank. Right. Whereas the way we used PageRank and collusion rank, it brought it down to so low. There would still be some users, which is fine, because see, Barack Obama should still rank here. Just because he is following spammers, we should not push him down the rankings. So some people it's okay to find here, but a large fraction of the spammers we could push down to absolute low rankings. So the last 10 percentile here. Right. So this was the study on link farming in social network. To our knowledge, that was the first study of link farming on a social network. There have been a lot of studies on link farming in web, but not on a social network. And we found the dynamics very different. Right, because in web there is no concept of following back. But in social network there is, and that creates this issue. Okay. And the last study which I was just present here is the one I was talking about yesterday. This is a very recent study, just presented last month in ICWSM. So here we are not using the network at all, but here we are using the content. Here we are focusing on trending topics in Twitter. So trending topics, these are examples of trending topics on a single day, sometime in April 2017. So these are example of crowdsourced recommendations. So if something like, if some word is suddenly being used highly by a large fraction of the people, then Twitter declares that as trending. Of course, their algorithm is more complex. I'm not going into details, and frankly, they won't even divulge all the details of their algorithm. But in general, it's that if some topic or some hashtag say has a sudden spike in its use, then it's declared as trending. So there have been lot of studies on characterizing the trending topics. Let's say, are most trending topics from politics? or from sports or what. There have been studies like this. In our study, we did not focus on the topics themselves, rather we focused on the people who make these trending. So, typically a hashtag becomes trending because a large set of people have posted it. Which is this large set? Right. So, basically we analyze the demographics of the crowds who promote Twitter trends. So, one intuition can be that the whole Twitter population is posting on a topic, that is why it is becoming trending, or a large fraction of Twitter is posting a topic, that is why we become trending. That is the intuition, but let us see. So, when we see demographic attributes, we mean these: gender, race and age. We have these categories, and of course, like we had this talk from Thamar yesterday, that author attribution is a difficult problem. From a post of the author to figure out these is a very difficult problem, especially for Twitter due to its noisy vocabulary and all. So, we did some literature survey and found that text based methods are really difficult. Therefore, we did not go towards that way. We used the profile images. So, there is this tool called Face++, which from a profile image it can tell you these characteristics of people. Of course, there is lot of limitation. Often people have a landscape as the profile, then we won't get anything. Often people have a group photo as the profile, then we won't get anything. But still, so we did some internal experiments and we found that it is more or less accurate. So, at least when the profile image has just one picture, it more or less gives good results, right. Yeah. So, but typically, so we could identify these kind of demographics for about 55% of the Twitter users, which is not very high, but well acceptable, I guess. Yes.
For age, right? I might give a photo of myself when I was 10 years old.
Yeah, true. Sure, all those things are there. So, yes.
No, exactly.
My 10-year-old, but not
No,
his.
no. I'm just saying like my in the sense of one person's is black and white.
And by the way, so we also observed one thing, that among these three attributes, age is the most difficult to figure out. From a face, age is the most difficult to figure out, even for this tool.
So there was a Microsoft tool sometime back, what's your age? So it would look
Ah,
for,
okay.
Picture, you could upload whatever picture
Okay.
and it would try to guess whether you're male
I
or
see.
female and what age you are.
Okay.
It wasn't that accurate because,
Age has
Same-
low accuracy.
similar system.
Age has low accuracy.
and sometimes it would also get the gender wrong, like
Okay.
when no human would get the gender wrong if they saw the
Yes.
picture.
Yes. Yeah.
Does Twitter also keep a record of all the profile pictures you have had until now, like Facebook does?
I didn't get the question.
So in Facebook, there's a album called Profile Pictures, which contains all the profile pictures you have had.
Okay. Okay. I don't think so. At least I don't know. It just has a field in the profile, which you are.
One.
Yes, and many people don't populate it even. But as far as I know, only one. Okay. But we found that this tool is okay. Like we could go ahead with the study with this. Okay. So now for a trend, we distinguish between two sets of people. One is called the promoter, who used or who posted on that topic before it became trending, and adopter, who posted on a topic after it became trending. So this was what Kalika was talking about yesterday. So promoters is a relatively smaller set of people who are posting on a topic before it became trending. After it became trending, many other people started posting about it. So the set of adopters is usually much larger than promoters, but we will compare them. So just to show what we are going at is this. So for example, there is this hashtag or trending topic called Wednesday Wisdom. We found that among the promoters who are promoting this topic, 48% are male and 52% are female. Whereas for another topic like WikiLeaks, 76% are male and 24% are female. So you see, not all trending topics are created equal. There is a huge distinction or difference between the demographics of the population who are promoting it. This is about gender. what about the race? So we had these three categories: black, Asian, and white. So for this trending topic, Komi, the distinction looks like this. By the way, one thing I must say, which I am not going into so much detail in this presentation, but when you see this, one natural question to ask is it interesting? When would it not be interesting?
Could you infer something which is not obvious?
And so when it would be obvious?
When the percentage is the same as the Twitter.
Exactly. If the Twitter population itself is like this, then it's not surprising that it's like this, right? So we were taking that into account. Like we have a global distribution of Twitter population, and we have a distribution for each trending topic. We were measuring the divergence, right? So even in Twitter population, whites is a large fraction. So it doesn't look, I mean, it's not so different from Twitter population as it seems to be, because in Twitter population also I think close to 70% would be white. Okay. Okay. So, but yeah. So for different trending topics, there are distinctions. There are statistically significant distinctions which we measured. Okay. So now we had these research questions. I won't go into all of them. I'll just give you very brief answers to a couple. So how different are the trend promoters from Twitter's overall population? So for some trends it's very similar, but for other trends it's much more different. Are there certain socially salient groups who are underrepresented among the promoters? I am not going into in this question. Please talk to me if you want more details. This concept of underrepresentation has a significance in US. They have these laws called 80% laws, which says that it's used like things like this. Say, suppose a company is hiring and it's hiring males and females. Someone might say that you are hiring more males than females. Then the company might say we get more male applications. That's why you are hiring more males. What's wrong in it? So to get past these debates, this US has these 80% laws. It says that if a certain group of people is less than 80% than other groups, then that group is underrepresented. So there are these semi-legal kind of rules. So I am not going into details, but that is what we were checking there. And the brief answer is yes, we found some demographic groups like say black women, black middle-aged women are the most underrepresented group in Twitter. So very few trends are dominated by black middle-aged women. Okay, and then this is the question which I was talking about. Do promoters and adopters of a trend, people who have posted before it became trending and after, are they different? And finally, what can promoter demographics tell about the type of the trend? Okay. So just one slide answers to some of these questions. How different are the trend promoters from Twitter's overall population? They are hugely different. So for 61% of trends, the gender distribution is statistically significantly different from the Twitter overall population. For 80% of the trends, the race distribution is statistically significantly different. So on. So I mean the brief takeaway is yes, for a very large fraction of the Twitter, so very few Twitter trends are produced by a random population of the Twitter population, a random sample of the Twitter population. Usually almost, I mean 80%, 60% trends are produced or promoted by a certain demographic group, which is very different from the overall Twitter population.
How do you define promoted by?
Anyone who has posted on that topic before that topic became trending.
And how do you define when a topic becomes trending?
No, that's so we go on streaming trending topics from Twitter.
It's Twitter's definition.
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course.
Some statistical, I mean, it's some.
Yes, they say that they go for like acceleration kind of thing. So in the last delta time, how much has the usage increased? They don't tell us the actual algorithm. But you can stream Twitter trending topics at certain points. So Twitter trending topics are I think given at 15-minute intervals. So you exactly know when a topic first became trending. So all people who have posted before that are the promoters, and all people who have posted after that instant are adopters. There can be common.
These are hashtags. So
Not necessarily. Trending topics, 90% of them are hashtags, but some other things can also come. Usually some names of person like Narendra Modi and all, they sometimes trend, or Trump. Okay. So I'm skipping the second question. The third question is what we were discussing yesterday. Do promoters and adopters of a trend have different demographics? Answer is yes. So here the orange bars give the divergence of the promoter population from Twitter overall population. So the y-axis is divergence. Simply, if high divergence means much more different from Twitter population. So the orange bars here show the promoter demographics. They are much more different from Twitter population. And the blue or green bars, they show the adopter demographics. So the divergence comes down hugely. So once a topic, usually topics become popular in small demographic groups, which are very different from the Twitter overall population. But once they become trending, everyone starts posting about it. So the adopter demographics is much closer to the overall population. Yes.
I know it's a little difficult to show in the graphics, but I think you would know whether the divergence were in the same direction. So for the same things, so for gender it will be single axis, that way it would be easier. That the orange bar could be on the male side and the blue bar could be on the female side, right?
Okay, so the divergence measure that is being used is not one which gives negative scores, if you mean like that.
It cannot give negative, positive or negative scores if there are multiple axes, but in gender,
Yes.
mostly there are only two genders.
Okay, okay, I cannot answer that offhand, but at least I don't remember seeing such gross differences that before it was dominated by women, after that it became dominated by men. I didn't see that much gross distinction. Sure, more people of the other side took it up, but no, I don't remember examples where the thing was completely overturned.
So it was more like a dilution.
Dilution, exactly, a dilution, or the demographics becoming more homogeneous with the overall population. Yes, that would be really interesting, but I mean, I'm sure everyone would have leapt up and down had they seen something like this. I don't remember seeing anything like that. Okay, so the last question which I'll just talk about is, so okay, we are doing this promoter demographics thing. So suppose we find that something is dominated by a niche community, what does that usually tell us? So I mean, pretty intuitive answers. So many of the trends express niche interests of their promoter groups. So things which are, so the typical thought process, we also had this thought process before doing this study, is that something which is becoming trending in Twitter must be universally popular, but that's not true. Often the things which become trending were initially popular in a small demographics. And also, that interesting thing is, there are some events like which are controversial in nature. There, different demographics start promoting different hashtags, and multiple of them can become trending. So the particular event that we studied here is there was a shooting incident in Dallas in US last year. So there, I mean, the unfortunate situation was that on a certain day, the police killed few black people, suspecting that they were terrorists or something like that. Then the black people organized a rally, a peaceful rally, to protest against these killings. But on that day, a black army veteran killed some of the policemen. So that week was extremely disturbed. So there were a lot of black people saying things like Black Lives Matter, whereas many other communities were posting things like All Lives Matter or Police Lives Matter, things like that, because like it was, I mean, both as if both communities were trying to kill each other or something. So during those events, things become more difficult. So okay, so here is just a comparison. So on the right side, you see the overall Twitter population. Yes, 68% are white, 14% are black, and 18% are Asian. It's heavily dominated by US, that's why it's this. Whereas this hashtag or this trending topic, black women at work, this is definitely of niche interest. So you have a huge fraction of black users posting it. Okay, and I'm not showing you the gender thing, but yeah, more women were posting it among blacks. So again, some trends differ heavily from the Twitter overall population. Yeah, And the last slide is this. So this was during the Dallas shooting in July 2016. I'm showing you two hashtags, Black Lives Matter and Police Lives Matter. If you see, the Black Lives Matter is dominated heavily by blacks, so 57% are blacks. Whereas in case of Police Lives Matter, 74% are white and 13% are black. So this was as if two opinions fighting it out against each other. So one utility of this study is, suppose you are just seeing the trending topics, that doesn't give you the complete information. So we believe that it's important also to know that which community has made this trending, to get the perspective. So if you get these pictures, then you know, okay, maybe you are able to understand in this case because it's very clear, Black Lives Matter and Police Lives Matter. But in some cases, from the hashtag itself, it might not be very clear. For example, the Democrats and Republican question. So which are being promoted by the Democrats and which are promoted by the Republicans, or say here Congress and BJP maybe. These are not always clear. So this kind of analysis should also accompany those trending topics to know that which community is promoting trends. Okay, so thanks. Thanks for the whole patient hearing. So any questions or suggestions, I'll be happy to take.
So the last study, right? So I can see how interesting it is from a sociological point of view, or even the point that you said at the end, the perspective. But as an application, suppose you are trying to build an application on top of it. So do you have any ideas?
So one thing is just to inform people that not all hashtags are different. The other thing is like community-specific recommendations.
Showing them
Yes.
charts like this.
Yes, that service we developed as part of the study. But one immediate application would be community-specific recommendations or community-specific trending topics. Like if someone wants to know what is, so for example, maybe a black woman is seeing Twitter. She might not be very interested in the whole global set of trending hashtags because she doesn't identify with most of them. Rather, if she wants, we can give her an option of seeing trending topics in her community. So people that her community is talking about.
So doesn't the self-select, this is like the the problem that everybody keeps claiming, that we all live in our bubbles.
Exactly.
And that.
So yes. Yeah.
Echo chamber.
So that is something which we have been studying over the last couple of years. So one thing we make sure is that we do not take judgmental stands. So we don't say this is good or this is bad. The thing that we mainly say is there should be transparency. So at least a user should understand that what I am seeing, what is the algorithm producing it. After that, suppose some user understands everything about filter bubbles and all, but still he or she is free to say, I want to be in my filter bubble. I want to see only one side of the story. That's fine. I mean, it's personal choice. After all, recommendations are personalized. So it's personal choice. But at least that person should be aware that there is another perspective. There are things beyond what I am hearing from my community itself. So we stop at making things transparent. We like, yeah, but I mean, yeah, and I mean, so again, so if we build a community-specific recommendation system, maybe someone might use it to get more into the filter bubble by only checking things which are popular in his or her community. Whereas some other user can use the same service to check out things which are trending in different communities and understand different perspectives.
Just even those people who are trying to get into the same filter bubble even more, they'll be aware that they are entering a filter bubble because it's marked like this.
Yes.
They'll not be oblivious that they'll not think that
Yeah.
it is general and then be in the filter bubble.
So the problem today is that often our worldview is shaped by what Facebook algorithms are showing us. We don't even know that something beyond exists. That's up to, we want to reach that level where at least users know that there are different perspectives. Then they are free to choose whether they want to go further into the bubble or take a balanced view.
And the variables that you are showing, right? Gender, race, and those are probably easy to identify from the profile pic and other information on the profile. But often these bubbles are around other kinds of ideologies. So
Exactly.
do you plan to?
Yeah, so we are doing some study on the political aspect at least, like the liberals and the Democrats. So there it's, as you said, it's difficult to even understand the psychology of a person, and also See these things, so when you talk about political bias, the first thing we come across is it's very subjective. So suppose we are doing AMT studies. Now the AMT workers will also have some bias. So suppose we show them a tweet and ask them, do you think it's liberally biased or, biased towards Democrats or Republicans? Now that person's bias will interfere with his judgment. Right, so suppose, a very maybe an untrue example still. Suppose there is a tweet saying, oh, Democrats are the best, whereas Republicans are absolutely garbage. We show this to an AMT worker and ask, is this biased? If that person himself is a democratically leaning thing, he says, no, this is the fact, why should it be biased? Yeah, we are the best. Whereas you show it to a Republican worker, then the opinion would be different. And we are not allowed to ask. We are allowed to ask, but we cannot force them to tell us their bias. Say while doing this kind of surveys, we cannot force the subjects to tell us their bias. Interestingly, Christian had done another study where they finally said that let's not ask even this question. So if you show a tweet or something or a text and say, is it biased? The answers would be very much colored by the bias of the person taking the survey. They asked a different question. The question they asked is, see this text, is it clear to you that it was posted by a person of which leaning? The difference is subtle, but there is a difference. One thing is showing a text, do you think this is biased towards side A or side B? Versus showing a text and asking, see this text, is it clear to you that it was posted by a person of which leaning? If it is, then that is biased. If someone by just seeing a text can say, this must have been posted by a Democrat party, the democratically leaning person. Like the example which I said there is a text saying Democrats are the best, whereas Republicans are absolute garbage. If I show you this text and ask, is it clear to you which side this post has come from? I think irrespective of your bias, you will say this must have come from a democratically leaning person. At least that is the argument that they said. They raised and they changed this question. Nothing can be foolproof, but yeah, they had some point.
How was the results of the study? Because there have been many in-betweens, right?
So no. So they didn't even attack the question of what is correct or what is wrong, what is in between and all. They had the questions they asked are different. This particular part was contributing a methodology to figure out whether something is biased. The standard methodology is to ask people, is this biased? But they were saying, let's not use that methodology, rather let's change the question in this way. But then they studied other things, like say before a controversial event and after a controversial event, how things change. Or also another interesting study they showed is usually which news headlines become most popular, the biased ones or the neutral ones? And what would be your guess? Biased ones were more popular. So, those were the kind of questions that they studied.
Are there biased news? Do they exist?
So I think all the US newspapers, they are known to have some kind of political bias. Okay, there are neutrals also, like New York Times is quite neutral.
No, definitely.
At least the official scores that they have, it's close to 0.5. But there are news agencies which are very towards 100 or 0.
The degree of bias might be.
Yeah.
For a good company, it might only depend on the author of the article, the author's bias, but sometimes the companies are bought off.
No, it's not only bought over, it's also like, as a newspaper, who do you decide to publish and not publish?
Yeah, the editor has.
It's an ideological thing as well, right? So it isn't like, when we say bias, we always think of it as like something really negative, that oh my god, it is bias. But everybody has a bias. It's a human thing to have a bias. So it can be an ideological stand. Yeah, if you have an opinion, you're biased. If you don't have an opinion, then
You need bias. Machine learning doesn't work if you don't have a bias. That's how important bias are.
And people are very negatively biased towards this term called bias.
yeah.
Every time we mention that in a paper, chances of rejection goes
I think
higher.
we should come up with a new
Yeah, so reviewers have actually noted this in the reviews. This is not about bias, don't use the term bias, use something else.
We should come up with
And people are very sensitive around that term. So leaning and all, people are willing to accept. Bias has this very negative connotation to it.
Did you try doing these experiments with Indian examples, news or trends?
No, because I mean, okay, that's a good question. We did think of that, but we have not started it because if you look at the psychology literature, the social psychology literature, the differences between Democrats and Republicans are well documented first, and second, they do not go down, they are not limited to politics. Even it is said that the kind of food they prefer is different. The kind of sports they prefer is different. It's been at least said, and you can sometimes make it out. But in India, we started this study but we backed off. The differences are not so much. Often they are caste based or things which are very difficult to figure out from text or things like that. I mean, the text doesn't give much difference. Whereas if someone is of a maybe higher caste, lower caste, those kind of things come into picture. So like politics is in some way less ingrained to other social aspects.
This might be changing.
It might be changing, sure, but yeah, I mean, we run into those
might
difficulties.
not have like a well-documented thing to kind of correlate it with.
Yeah, that would be actually good. I mean, yeah, so yeah, Indian politics and social factors, maybe they are too complex, but it has not been figured out. I mean, there's a lot of study on Democratic and Republican leanings, bias, etc., bias of newspapers in US and all. There's a whole body of work. Definitely not, almost nothing in Indian context.
There's some theoretical study or critical discourse analysis. Other people study ideology, and they're very micro level reading. So there's a group. It's very detailed study on very small data. Larger.
And
But on
nothing
social
which is
media,
Yeah, no, generally they do newspapers, but they do news channels.
the news channels, I mean, at least in normal day-to-day life discussion, we always say DTV is biased, but this and this is biased.
And they actually prove that.
yeah. So, but what I mean is that like we might say all these things, etc., but there is no study, right?
Yeah, there's no study.
That then you can use to, yeah.
And to my knowledge, there isn't even any standard data set, like who has collected a lot of data and is analyzing that. I'm not fully aware of. At least I have not seen anything.
How often do people switch sides in the US?
From like for example,
Very
from
few.
Democrats, I don't think.
I don't think I don't.
That might be the difference.
Might
A
sure.
lot of people might be just looking around.
I mean, you have Trump, right? That he changes his mind every day. There it is. But those are very rare instances. Most people are going with one ideology because instead of the result of your upbringing, Mexico is more. Politicians switch parties if they're not supported or something. I don't mind.
Yeah, even in India it happens. I mean, party ideologies are only now beginning to be set in stone, right? Earlier, everybody had a very similar kind of ideology, which was like, I want to win and I want
Yes.
to make money when I win. Right? So only now we're talking about very across the board. I'm not saying all parties, but like across the board, we are seeing much more ideological framing.
I'm not sure, because I did a very interesting analysis of why this is happening. It's a totally economics article. That's how the economy is actually changing, and now you really need ideologies to sustain Indian politics.
Maybe going forward, it might be. Maybe now is the time for people to start doing those studies. Except I don't know.
Possible.
If you get a visa, stay.
Yeah, I mean, whether you want a CBI inquiry
Yeah.
or not.
Yeah. Plus, it's true. I mean, so last couple of years, we are avoiding studying topics which are politically related. Yeah, I mean, there are lots of topics to study. Why choose those kind of things? Yeah.
I mean, a case in point is that person who did the very thorough evaluation of the EVM machines, right?
Yeah.
And he's hounded like anything, and he actually did a scientific
Yes.
study, right? And, really hounded.
Even our department did the study and they broke the ABN, but they chose not to report it because they were scared that since we live in Qatar, it's not a safe environment. Like the head of the department didn't allow it to go up, and they just buried it.
Okay. Thank you.